I'm Bryce Butler from Access Ventures, and this is More Than Profit, a show where I talk with founders, investors, entrepreneurs, and leaders of all kinds about living and working with purpose, how they do it, and why. Welcome back to More Than Profit. My guest today is Jonathan Kumar. Born to immigrant parents in poverty, he quickly learned the value and need for community. Later receiving an opportunity to study at the University of Michigan, he earned a degree in informatics and economics, specializing in user experience design. And in 2014, he produced a documentary on social change and later developed a tool for restaurants to convert potential food waste into funding for local food banks called Food Circles. As a serial entrepreneur, Jonathan, he went on to launch an app that we're going to talk about today called Samaritans from a grant from Vulcan. Vulcan's a company of Microsoft's co-founder Paul Allen that has been funding programs to end homelessness. Samaritan exists to enable people without a home to access the social and financial capital needed to leave the street. But first, before we get into everything Samaritan, Jonathan, welcome to the podcast. And I'd love to kind of rewind the clock a little bit. Like your life is pretty fascinating. The things that you've already done in your short life, building apps and supporting people through raising awareness of documentary films, growing up in the United States to immigrant parents. What kind of set you down this path of kind of using the skills you learned at the University of Michigan to build technology solutions that helped the unhoused in our communities?
Great question, and thank you for having me on. My story starts before I was born, really. My parents were in South India, and my dad got a chance to study in the States. This is the late 80s, where America welcomed immigrants and wanted people to come. And so my dad had an opportunity to study at State University of New York in Buffalo. And so we moved from South India. My parents did before I was born, from South India to snowy Buffalo in the late 80s. And
wow. And where in South India?
Chennai,
okay.
Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
And so basically, when my dad was going to school, he wasn't working, and my mom wasn't permitted to work. And so the three of us, once I came along, were living off of a student stipend of $600 to $800 a month. We were never unhoused, but I was born in a public hospital. We lived in public housing. Our car was worth maybe $1,000. We were on food stamps, all this stuff, WIC, and essentially, those were the first 5-6 years of my life. And I remember what that was like, opening the fridge and, not seeing a lot of food, but for government cheese that I could eat. And I actually don't eat cheese anymore as a result of some sicknesses that I got from that, just like tearing into a bunch of government cheese products. And so, once my dad graduated, my life was basically on easy street from there. But you never really forget what that's like. And a key part of why Samaritan exists is actually how during those first 5-6 years of my life, a group of people sort of adopted my parents and provided for them financially, provided for them socially, even provided legal assistance for my parents. I was born, like I said, in a public hospital. I was 10 pounds, 10 ounces, and my mom wasn't offered a C-section, which is borderline criminal. Because the hospital
that was a hefty baby.
Yeah, I was a fatso. But I mean, it wasn't fair because they didn't want to go through the additional expense of a C-section for them not to offer that to my mom. And so this group of people from a local church, like I said, that basically adopted my parents, advised that we pursue a legal settlement for the hospital. And that's what we received to put our first down payment down on a house in the Midwest. So, this team was absolutely critical for my parents to make it in such a strange environment where they didn't have any family, any friends, any real support. And, fast forward 30 years and I'm a user experience designer in Seattle, and I'm seeing this human suffering pervasive in such a beautiful city. And I'm talking to these individuals about how they got to the streets, where they're trying to go, what they need to get there, just trying to better understand that user experience, I came to see, like, essentially these people haven't been given what my parents were given. That's about the only thing that separates me from them. And, it's a huge, huge piece of how Samaritan came about. But, of course, glad to go into what I was doing before Samaritan.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, like, just camping out there for a second. Like, I think a lot of times we look at the circumstances of the unhoused or the poor that live among us, and we think it's an economic issue. And there truly is an economic issue, right? Money is a factor, but I think, money divorced from community, money divorced from connection, and support that people need, from caring. And it's also unique. Like, I think one of the things you and I have talked about before, just in our conversations around Samaritan and what we're hoping to do in Louisville, specifically, just is that the human connection, and that everybody's circumstance is different. And oftentimes the solutions that we do provide are very cookie cutter, and and people still fall through those cracks. And so I think, recognizing, okay, how do we help a person? How do we create a solution? Maybe that's the Samaritans. Maybe that's a myriad of things that help connect them to the resources they need.
Yeah, I mean, in Proverbs, this is a Tim Keller thing that I heard from a sermon from him once, but he says in Proverbs, it says in Proverbs, the wealthy have many friends, but the poor are despised by even their own neighbors. And so it's like his insight, Tim Keller's insight is like, it's people aren't poor, and as a result, they have no neighbors. It's like they have no neighbors, and so they are poor.
That's interesting.
And so, yeah, I mean, people need physical homes, but we have found in practice at Samaritan that if you can provide at least a social home to everyone, and that's something I believe we can do very quickly, within weeks, often a physical home comes soon after.
Yeah. Well, so for you, Jonathan, like, degree from University of Michigan, but it's very clear, like, you have a software background, but every thread that I mentioned in the intro, from developing food circles to the documentary film to now Samaritans, like, what is it about your lived experience and even your education? What is it about your upbringing that shaped the application, if you will, of your education in a direction that is serving others and developing solutions to help others, instead of, because you could take your skills, I'm sure, and build a tech solution and solve a first world problem and make lots of money. Now, that's not to say you're not trying to make money with Samaritans, but you've taken the skills you've learned and the passion you have, and you've applied it to some of the biggest societal problems that we see. What is it about your own lived experience and the education that kind of put you down that path?
Yeah, one of the co-founders at Samaritan, Chris Sun, actually said it to me during his first interview, or when we were talking about working together. He said, I feel called to meet needs instead of wants. And, I have a finance background. I could become a dentist. I could get into accounting. That's him speaking. And he said, I just feel like God has called me to solve needs and not wants, and to not just, and then this is my language, I guess. It's like, life isn't just about doing what you love. It's solving what you hate. And I grew up, again, not unhoused, but, on the fringe, if you will, under the poverty line, certainly for the first season of my life. And you don't forget what that's like. You see, your parents living out the values of Jesus as best as they know how. And you spend time trying to get to know, is Jesus real, and what does he want for my life? And I think just as a result of, that first 5 years and the values of Christ that I learned. And it took a long time. Like, if, high school Jonathan, college Jonathan would be stunned at who I've become, probably. But I think that's basically how I've come to follow this career path and just, stumble forward into this journey of social entrepreneurship. It wasn't like I want to be a social entrepreneur. I want to be the next Blake from Tom's Shoes. It was really just a lot of blind stumblings, I would say.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, so you mentioned your early years. What was that like? I mean, what was that like at an emotional level? Because obviously it shaped you and it's kind of helped you your outlook and your perspective on the world. But like, as a 5-year-old watching your parents, like what did that feel like? And then how did that help shape even the way you look at and experience the people that you serve through Samaritans?
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit on what I remember from when I was 5, but for some of those traumatic incidents with cheese that I mentioned, and then just like, kind of feeling like even though our family was in India, I still had this extended family because of this group of people that took us in, and they were just like your all-American apple pie white family with a bunch of kids and cousins and uncles and aunts, and we got invited over for these Thanksgiving dinners out in the country outside of Buffalo and stuff. And I felt that sense of family, and so again, fast forward to 2016 in Seattle, you just get to meet these folks, and the only people who give a damn about them are people who are in the same situation that they are, and they don't have a team of people that they trust or that trust them, or sometimes both, that are housed or resourced, and as a result, it's really hard for them to make forward progress. They have access typically to a case manager, but that case manager is underpaid, is overworked, has maybe 30 minutes to an hour a month to spend with a client. And, what good relationships are built on 30 minutes a month? It's not many. And even for the client, like in their life, they're thinking this person is being paid to be my babysitter. And, it's not always it's not always what they need in terms of relational support.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to imagine, because you mentioned like your high school self, and I read a quote recently where you said, I love drug users. I've used them myself and would probably still be using if I was without a home. I was curious. It kind of struck me just, what did you mean when you said that? And maybe what issue were you trying to highlight in even saying that around kind of how maybe we perceive people that are unhoused?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's I think, well, first off, I've struggled with different forms of addiction through my life, so I know how difficult in that can be, and the extent that a person will go to satisfy an addiction. So I've been there, and it's a kind of dark part of my life. So first that. And then coming into Samaritan and doing the user research, 2015, 2016, 2017, just spending time with folks. Like I was with everyone else saying like, okay, if I give you this $5, like, not that I care how you're going to use it, I just don't want it to harm you. And, if you're going to use it for alcohol, is that the best decision that you could be making? And am I enabling you to harm yourself or to perpetuate your suffering? Because that's not what I want to do. And so I had that same mentality that a lot of people, I think, have. And I remember talking to a person on a bus in Seattle who had asked me for $5 and $10, and I felt sort of emboldened or empowered in that moment. So I said, what are you going to use it for? And he said, I'm going to go to a bar and get a drink. And I said, do you feel like that's the best, use of your resource, or that would be a good way to spend the money? Something like that. And he said, it's been a really, really long day, and I just want to be able to sit down and enjoy a beer. Because, you know, it helps me like untangle and de-stress, and I am going to be, you know, sleeping underneath a bridge tonight. And, you know, I mean, like, I just think like, man, if I had to sleep under a bridge tonight or any night, like I would need at least a 6-pack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I might need a 12-pack.
Well, and I think what really struck me by your quote, one, was your honesty. You know, the fact that, okay, I've lived this. And I think sometimes it's really good for people to hear the lived experience of others, you know, because we assume a typecast. We typecast people, right? And the fact that you've struggled with addiction and can relate in that experience. Actually, this is a sidebar, but I listened to a podcast myself the other day, and he was talking about how we all are addicts in one form or the other. So we could totally unpack like what it means to be an addict or addicted to something, but that's another conversation. But I just think it's helpful to kind of talk about like what are those things that we are, you know, craving and longing, and how do we, but that for you, you know, without a home, you'd still be in that place. And so it's this reality that like, man, look, the way that we help people face these issues is surrounding them in community with other people. But then what even you're pointing on right now, one of the books I usually require for my team is called Evicted by Matthew Desmond. I don't know if you've ever read it. But he's a social scientist. He studied eviction in Milwaukee and both sides of the equation, both from the landlord's perspective and the people being evicted. It's just a powerful story. And one of the things he really highlighted, I think, is we all have our own things, right? So I'll go home and I'll have a beer, you know, and it's helpful for me to unwind. But I have a financial safety net and I have a house. Nobody questions the fact that I go home and unwind by having a beer. But the minute someone's unhoused and they have like very tangible needs,
the minute you're poor,
we question those very basic decisions as if, you know, you should never desire or do those things. And it's like, but wait a minute, like they're still a human. They still have these desires. They still deserve the right, in a sense, to unwind and to find a sense of peace and respite, even though they don't have a lot financially. And so what he was highlighting was like SNAP benefits and how people run out of their SNAP benefits. Like, oh, they're going and buying steak. And then we just judge a person for going and buying steak. It's like, well, wait a minute. You go and buy steak. You buy a meal as a celebration. What is it about being poor that doesn't allow a person to do that? And what does it say about us if we're judging someone else for a moment of enjoyment? And how do we reconcile those things as we are facing the problems we see in society? So
the more the time you spend with this population, you get to know the practical realities, both in a physical sense, sleeping under a bridge, and in a social sense, you know, total isolation, total, you know, if you're told if you're out flying a sign and you're told 100 times an hour by cars driving by people walking by that you don't exist. And if you know, even worse, like you're spit upon, you're despised. Like I would need a couple beers. I would need maybe something stronger to help me forget how you know, despised I felt. And you know, most panhandlers, you know, they're not out there because they want to be, despite that being a commonly held understanding. Like they're begging strangers for help because they don't know any friends or any family that they could ask instead. And it's just like, you know, when you think about, again, the social reality, the physical reality of the isolation, the despisement, the physical conditions in which they have to sleep, I just know that I would be using alcohol, using substances, maybe something worse to survive and get by through something like that. So you know, it's hard for me to judge someone who has turned to that as a way to survive.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think it's worth noting too is like you and I got connected through a public marketing campaign that we started in Louisville around Knowhomelessness, because I think there's also this assumption around what it is to be unhoused and who is unhoused. And I think a lot of times our minds jump to that person that is panhandling, but statistically, there's a large swath of our population that are the working poor, that are couch surfing, the large number of children in our public school systems that are on free or reduced lunch, that are technically homeless, or the student or the gig worker that's working 2 or 3 jobs. 45% of people technically homeless have a job. And so I think when we think about those national statistics and we start to reimagine what our own perceptions of what it is to be unhoused or homeless, I think we start to see people and not just a person begging on the street. Like it's a big conversation around homelessness and what leads to that. So.
I mean, no homelessness and the double entendre that it represents is so amazing. And I saw it. I was just so stoked. So I can't remember if I found the podcast and then found out about no homelessness, or then found no homelessness and then heard a podcast episode. But I was like, oh man, I gotta reach out, and here we are.
I know, it's been great. It's been really good. Well, and which is actually really cool, because now we're working towards an activation of our own in Louisville, Kentucky. So more to follow on that, but we're excited to be working with Samaritans in our own backyard. So let's get to Samaritans a little bit. So, given all of the things that you've experienced, the people you've met in the work that you do, there are a lot of things. There's a lot of sensitivities that you have to deal with. There's privacy issues. There's just the different needs of caseworkers and service providers that you might be working with. There's, like you said, how do we limit? Do we limit? First off, do we limit how the funds can be used that are raised through this platform? How do we do that? How do we surround people? So help us. What is Samaritans in your words, and what are you hoping to accomplish with it as you look to the future?
Yeah. Samaritan is a support platform specifically designed for people without a stable home. We provide our members access to unconditional financial and social support, as well as incentives on a path for that person to reach housing, income, and health goals. So a technology platform that allows, again, our members to gain the financial and social support that they need to survive and move forward. We deploy Samaritan memberships through community-based organizations, nonprofits, health systems, even health insurance companies are starting to get really excited about this, and there's a whole really interesting business model behind that. But essentially, we are trying to reach the unreachable, last mile populations that have experienced chronic homelessness, often with comorbidities around mental illness, substance use, justice involvement, and get them one of our Samaritan smart wallets. So the smart wallet includes a smart ID. It's a Bluetooth, low energy Bluetooth device called a beacon. And then in most cases, one of our smart debit cards as well. And so a person is offered one of these wallets, and if they're interested in having one, and it's got $10 on the start, so it's not a hard pitch per se. They're first receiving this through a street outreach team, a case management group, a health navigation group. And if they're interested in becoming a Samaritan member, which is a really cool club, I think anyways, and it's 12 months by default, that's how long the membership is, they will just they'll have the opportunity to share some of their own life goals, and then break those goals down into needs and action steps for themselves. And then they can also share other things like life facts or job skills that they have, other parts of their story. And so, a lot of people choose not to share, which is totally fine. Some of those aspects, or honestly, they're in a position where they can't share. We've had members say, like, I'm just really freaking cold and I don't know what to do. I'm cold and I'm hungry, and that is completely valid. And then we have other people who haven't been asked, what do you want from life? How are you? What can I do to help? they haven't been asked those types of questions in 3 years. And they'll go off, they'll basically give us a podcast interview about their life, and we have to cut them off. And so, you hear all sorts of things, and most of it is amazing. But anyways, they fundamentally will share goals, break them down into needs and action steps. And then from there, they'll start to receive strategic, financial, and social support from our network of Samaritans, which are everyday individuals and organizations who, through our app or our website, can join the team of a specific Samaritan member and just give simple money to address a need or help in a non-financial way, like by sending messages of encouragement or offering to connect someone in a community, or even just do a weekly phone call and listen to someone share about their week. So our members will start to receive that through text messages if they have a phone, emails if they have email, and or through their case manager if they don't have either of those, if they don't have a phone or an email. And then they also are able to earn incentives, Bryce, by taking action steps forward. Those action steps are co-defined by them, as well as the case manager using our Samaritan app to activate their smart wallet and manage their membership. So action steps are typically things like, let's meet again, meaning the case manager and the individual in the next 7 days or 14 days or 30 days, or let's have you meet with my friend at this street medicine clinic, or let's set a next step to register for Medicaid, or get your ID back, or call your parole officer, whatever the thing may be. So there's this interplay of needs and action steps that, when met and taken, result in progress towards, larger housing goals, income goals, health goals. That was a long answer. I don't know if...
No, dude, I the more you and I have connected, and the more, I've experienced what it is you're building, it's really, really, really impressive. And, I'm only hopeful that more communities continue to see this as a great tool. I did want to ask you a couple of things, because I think there's a couple of things you said that maybe some people are going to I'm curious about that. You said unconditional financial support. So I want to know what do you mean by that? Number one, and number two, how did you make that decision? Because I have to believe that was not something you kind of you guys probably wrestled with that as a team. Okay, what does that look like? How do we provide support to our members in a way that allows them to make these decisions? Or what does that look like when you say unconditional financial support? Help my listeners understand what that means, because some of my people are going to really really wrestle with, I don't know.
Yeah.
Are they gonna go buy drugs with it, or what are they gonna do? So.
Yeah, explaining sort of that aspect of the model is definitely worth it. So people will start to receive support and then earn additional support through Samaritan over time. As they receive and earn funds from Samaritan, they can redeem those funds within the context of a relationship with a case manager to address survival and strategic needs. So, tactically what that means is when a person has a positive balance on their account, they can speak with the professional in their life that's working with them to achieve housing goals. That professional, which is, typically a case manager, can help that person redeem the funds in one of two ways. First, we have a host of options on the Samaritan app that the case manager is using, or the community health worker, or what have you, and the case manager can push funds towards specific goods and services that the person needs. So things like phone bills, phone devices, storage lockers, move-in deposits, prescriptions, really. IDs, anything you can think of, there's either a reimbursement or a direct fulfillment process that we have in place to move the money towards what's going to be most helpful for that person in the estimation of the person and the person working with them. So that's option A. Option B is we have these debit cards that if the organization that we're working with on the ground feels, hey, this is what's going to be best for this individual, they can move money from Samaritan on the card and then give the card to the individual. We are able to, flow purchase data back to the organization and the case manager. And we have some ability to set restrictions, but that's on the organization to determine that. We don't make a call on that. Our Samaritans understand that they cannot dictate how the funds are used. That just goes against, a lot of what we want to provide to our members in terms of autonomy and dignity for the matter. But the organization that's working with them, who we would consider the expert in the situation, as well as the individual themselves, can determine, okay, we want to kind of help this person save and push this money towards more strategic things. Or, hey, we don't have to be a middleman. We have a great understanding of where this person is at and what they need, and we're going to move money out of the card and then let them do their thing and hopefully maintain the connection.
That's great.
So what we say to Samaritans or organizations who are putting money in is, hey, we're not guaranteeing anything about the funds except that every dollar will be used in the context of a relationship with a professional in their life. And it has taken years, in fact, to kind of find a balance that we're comfortable with, because there are people on both sides who criticize us for having restrictions and then criticize us for not having restrictions. So it is a very interesting space to be in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think it's what you're also hitting on is a question of like what Samaritan is and what Samaritan is not. And I think that's probably an important thing and a helpful thing to point out, because like you're not the service provider. You're not.
We're not the solution. Yeah, I mean,
you're not the solution, but you're a tech enabling solution for a platform, if you will, drop the word solution, to help support members and community members and organizations better serve unhoused people. So how do you navigate those waters of like, this is what we are? Because I have to believe some people would look at Samaritans like, oh, they are the service providers. They're doing the case management.
I know. It's frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I think it's also
a lot of our customers. Yeah. They're like assuming that we're going to provide case management and so forth. And yeah, we're just a way to help the person. Like we're like a tool that can be used within the context of human services or health services to, engage the individual, give them the capacity to stay engaged, and
Correct.
Support them towards actual solutions, which are housing or employment or recovery or all of the above.
Well, and
we want to be a conduit versus
and I'd have to believe
destination.
Yeah, that some of your success metrics, then you're a capacity building tool for a lot of these service providers, because you're able to say, we're able to help you achieve your goals. So the metrics or whatever, like what is it that you guys measure as a measurement of success for Samaritans?
Yeah. For Samaritan, as we partner with human services with two organizations, a couple of organizations in Louisville, hopefully here this year, is we want to take a look at what percentage of people are willing to work with you and accept services and utilize services, and then what percentage of individuals that you do engage with, what percentage of them graduate to a successful program outcome, which is typically housing. And then how many interactions or how many days on average does it take to get to that positive program outcome? And so we expect that Samaritan members are going to be more likely to engage and stay engaged through the difficult trauma of homelessness, through the 27 steps involved in getting into stable housing. So we expect that Samaritan members are going to be more likely to engage, stay engaged, and reach outcomes in a shorter amount of time. So if we can, improve the outcome rate and then reduce the days to outcome, that helps the nonprofit get time back and that they can give to the next person in need sooner, and report a higher number of outcomes to their own donors and their own city contracts, which impacts their ability to pay people well and grow as an organization.
So what is it? You also mentioned health insurance companies, which I think is quite fascinating. And so talk to me a little bit about that. Like what is it about Samaritans that's attractive to health insurance companies? And what, because it's pretty interesting for me. Obviously Access Ventures works across the country. We do have some very specific efforts in Louisville, but we're the hub of Humana and Kindred and so many other healthcare companies, health insurance providers even. What is it that they are excited that you're providing to where they're jumping on board?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, as context, from 2016 until 2020, most of our partnerships were just with human services, meaning they would pay us per client per month that was using Samaritan, or per client per year, to give them access to a Samaritan membership. Like, we would never charge the member themselves, obviously, and we would never charge we actually stopped charging our Samaritans, transaction fees and so forth on the platform. We just turned that off. We wanted to be a strategic intervention, a strategic tool in the tool belt of human services to improve the outcomes of their work. And if we were creating value for them, it made sense for us to try and pay our bills that way. And so, like I said, for the first couple of years of our organization, we've partnered with human services to help them improve engagement rate, reduce time to outcome, so forth, for the clients that they serve, that they are trying to move forward, that they are stuck in a rut with, as it relates to their housing journey, or their recovery journey or employment journey. But I think ultimately, and so typically a nonprofit will get excited about using this as an engagement tool, and then they'll ask a United Way or a Paul Allen or a Access Ventures, for a grant to deploy the resource, and that can be a complex process. And so what we ultimately want to do is pay nonprofits to deploy Samaritan for people that they are serving, versus asking them to pay for the solution. They really need to be paid to deploy these types of solutions, versus the other way around. And
how do we get there?
For us to get there, we need to align the interests and the incentives of entities that have much bigger wallets. And so over the back half of 2020 and then into 2021, I spent the time, validating, talking to health systems and then Medicaid insurance plans, and saying, hey, what if we could deliver this benefit? I mean, the benefits of Samaritan memberships our membership is clear. Like, we have these amazing stories that I could spend an hour talking about on how this resource has lifted the spirits and helped people move forward in a way that they haven't experienced before. And my words are matter so much less than theirs. So, there's a lot of great stories on our website and so forth. But anyway, so the benefit to the member is clear. So, you talk to a health system, to an insurance company, like, what if we could provide this benefit to your hardest to reach, unengaged, unhoused, high cost individuals, on your Medicaid plan or in your hospital, in your emergency department. It turns out that, when you don't have housing, I have the number written somewhere here. You are 30 times more likely to land in the hospital or the emergency department than someone like you or I. And it's like 15 times more expensive than the average person. And you're likely to die, unfortunately, 20 to 30 years before the rest of us. And so, this population, it's like, there's another classic stat. It's like 5% of the Medicaid population costs half of Medicaid costs for the country. And so, we see this, very tight connection between a person's quality of access to housing or income or recovery, community support groups, and their health outcomes, their health costs, their quality of life, their life expectancy. and health plans are realizing the same thing. At some level, health plans, health insurance companies, same thing. Health plans, like at some level, when the person is costly enough, Bryce, and you may have heard of stuff like this, they are literally just paying the rent of their most expensive members because it's cheaper for them to pay $2,000 a month for rent and maybe some supportive services than it is to leave them on the street. And more and more healthcare entities are realizing this. Even cities are starting to do stuff like this. I mean, it's a whole housing first model. The challenge is for these health plans is that they are still most cases, a for-profit entity. And so they can only pay the $2,000 a month or $2,500 or $1,500 a month for a person to either just get their rent paid for a year or have a dedicated case manager in their life. We call it complex care management. They can only make it pencil out financially for like a very, very slim portion, like 50 people in a state, 100 people in a state market, which obviously is not even a drop in the bucket. And so, Samaritan, because we are a support and engagement technology that can help people access the financial support, the social support that they need to find a housing solution, we're a lot cheaper than paying someone's rent. Trust me, like 1/20th the cost.
Yeah.
And so because it's a lot cheaper, they can apply these social interventions to this population that needs more than medication and doctor's visits. They can apply these social interventions to a wider tier of members that are slightly lower cost, but are much greater in number.
Yeah, that's exciting.
That's their interest that we've been working to validate and
it makes total sense. It saves them money. It saves taxpayers money. It helps a human being, live longer, more healthier lives. So I think those are
the way you said it. I mean, yeah, that's a great summary. I should have just gone with that for your audience.
No, man. I mean, the statistic, it was super helpful to hear that. And so Jonathan, I'm going to give you the final word because you and I could talk for a while, but we are going to put. I found a great commercial on Vice that kind of does give the picture and the story of some of your Beacon users, I think in Seattle. So we'll put that in our show notes and obviously direct people to your website. But what are what's your BHAG? What's your goal 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Big, hairy, audacious goal. Like, what are you pushing for? What is Samaritan's, what is it going to be as you think about the future? And, I know you've had some great successes over the last 6 and 12 months and you got some betas working across the country, but where do you really hope this is 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, the mission is that any person on or near the street would have access to the financial and social support they need to find stability in their life. So that's a huge, populace. We're talking about, probably 1 million to 2 million people. Our immediate vision is to have helped more than 100,000 men, women, and children take steps towards a stable home in their life. And there's plenty of opportunity for us to do so, unfortunately, because of the need. So that's kind of the BHAG, is that the term? Is get to 100K Samaritan members, not just activated, but benefited. We measure our impact through these monthly quality measures around housing, income, access to primary health care, so on and so forth. And so, we look at those measures and say, hey, we want to see 100K people move the needle in terms of their quality of access to housing or another area of life that's key to them. And, we have a 10-year plan that we think is very achievable. So by 2031 or 32 now, and, with the help of some awesome partners like, I probably shouldn't say, but with some of our customers and some of our funders, we think we could potentially get there sooner. So, that's the big vision that I'm working towards. And it's all about, deeply impacting people without a home at scale. That's the reason why, we're doing this, is to reach that scale. And it hasn't really been done before. So if we can be a part of that, I think, that aligns with my faith and aligns with what I think God wants for the world in terms of reconciliation between, the poor and the rich, in terms of who he's created and how he wants us to live our lives. So great.
If you get a chance, please take a moment to watch the story about Samaritans in the show notes and check out samaritan.city to learn more. And on this podcast, we talked some about Knowhomelessness, the campaign that we did around Louisville and Southern Indiana. To learn more about that and to stay up to date with some exciting activations coming out later this year, check out knowhomelessness.com. That is KNOW, homelessness.com. As always, stay up to date by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, drop us a review so others can find us as well. More Than Profit is a production of Access Ventures. Direction, design, and editing is done by Render, a public benefit innovation as a services corporation in Louisville, Kentucky. To learn more about their work, check out workwithrender.com. As always, I'm Bryce Butler with Access Ventures. Thanks for listening.